There are moments in history when everything changes. Not gradually, like the slow turn of seasons, but instantly, like a knife cutting through silence. For humanity, that moment came on a Tuesday morning, when the colony on Titan went dark. No explosions, no final transmissions, just the sudden absence of 40,000 beating hearts. The kind of silence that makes your soul ache before your mind understands why. Captain Donovan Hayes stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station, watching the empty data streams where Titan's signals should have been. His hands gripped the console edge so hard his knuckles turned white. Beside him, Lieutenant Jasmine Park kept refreshing her screen, hoping for a glitch, praying for an error. But the numbers didn't lie. Titan colony, humanity's jewel in the outer system, had been wiped clean. The Galactic Council's response came within hours. Not warships or rescue teams, but lawyers and diplomats. They arrived with their translator devices and their carefully worded statements, speaking of tragic accidents and rogue elements. Ambassador Threxus, a creature that looked like melted glass given form, addressed Earth's government with what passed for sympathy among his kind. His words were smooth, practiced, hollow. He promised investigations that would never come, justice that would never arrive, and compensation that could never replace the souls we lost. Donovan watched the broadcast from his quarters, and something inside him cracked. Not broke, cracked, like ice on a frozen lake, ready to shatter under the next step. His sister had been on Titan, working in the agricultural domes, raising tomatoes in alien soil so Earth could feed its expanding reach. She'd sent him a message just the day before, talking about her daughter's first words. Now they were both gone, erased by beings who saw humans as useful tools, nothing more. Earth's leadership wanted peace. President Garcia stood before the United Nations, calling for calm, for patience, for trust in the galactic system. The corporations that profited from alien trade echoed her words, flooding media channels with messages of unity and cooperation. But down in the streets, in the veteran halls, in the homes of those who'd lost someone, a different conversation was happening. People were remembering things they'd tried to forget. The subtle disrespect in every council meeting, the way alien species spoke over human delegates, the trade agreements that always favored everyone but Earth, the mining rights stolen through legal manipulation, the colonies that disappeared without explanation, always ruled as accidents, always blamed on human error. Donovan wasn't alone in his rage. Lieutenant Park felt it too. So did Chief Engineer Robert Okonkwo, who'd lost his husband on Titan. So did Dr. Yuki Tanaka, whose research team had been studying new crops in those very domes. Across Earth and her remaining colonies, thousands of people were waking up to the same terrible truth. The Galactic Council didn't respect humanity. They tolerated us, and the moment we became inconvenient, they'd discard us like broken machinery. The resistance started quietly, not with grand declarations or public announcements, but with whispered conversations in secure channels. Former military officers reached out to old contacts. Scientists began routing research through private networks. Engineers started requisitioning supplies that didn't appear on any official manifest. Donovan found himself at the center of something he hadn't planned but couldn't stop. People trusted him. They'd served with him during the belt conflicts, seen him make impossible decisions, watched him bring crews home alive when death seemed certain. Now they looked to him again, not for orders but for permission to feel what they were feeling. 3 months after Titan, the first strike happened, not on Earth but on Callisto Station, a neutral trading post where Council species conducted business. Nobody died, but the entire western docking bay was reduced to molten metal. Carved into the surviving hull in letters 10 meters high were the words, "Remember Titan." The Galactic Council's response was immediate and predictable. They called it terrorism, demanded Earth hand over the perpetrators, threatened sanctions and military intervention. Ambassador Threxus appeared on every channel, his translated voice dripping with disappointed superiority, speaking of humanity's violent nature, our inability to control our emotions, our unsuitability for civilized galactic society. That broadcast was a mistake, because while the Council saw terrorism, humanity saw justice. While they demanded surrender, we remembered every insult, every stolen opportunity, every lost colony. President Garcia condemned the attack publicly, but privately, her calls to prosecute the resistance grew weaker. The corporations still pushed for peace, but their employees were quietly funding the movement. Even the media, which had always promoted cooperation, started asking harder questions. Why hadn't the Council protected Titan? Why were their investigations always inconclusive? Why did human colonies fail so much more often than everyone else's? Donovan didn't claim credit for Callisto. He didn't need to. The council knew who was behind it, had his face on every warrant, his name on every bounty. But they couldn't catch him. Nobody could. Because he wasn't hiding in shadows or running to distant systems. He was standing in plain sight on Earth, surrounded by millions who would die before giving him up. The council sent operatives, but they disappeared. They sent assassins, but they failed. They sent diplomats to negotiate, and Donovan met with them personally. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse in Old Detroit, neutral ground chosen for its symbolism. This city had died and rebuilt itself 3 times in human history. Now it would witness the rebirth of something fiercer. Ambassador Threxus arrived with 6 guards, all armed, all nervous. Donovan came alone, unarmed, unafraid. They sat across from each other at a salvaged table, 2 beings from different worlds, speaking different languages, wanting different futures. Threxus spoke first, offering deals and compromises. Return to order, he said, and the council would increase Earth's trade quotas. Stop the attacks and they'd grant humans seats on minor committees. Surrender yourself and they'd guarantee no retaliation against Earth. Donovan listened to every word, his face expressionless, his hands steady on the table. When the ambassador finished, silence filled the warehouse like water filling a drowning man's lungs. Then Donovan smiled, not with joy, but with the terrible certainty of someone who's already decided how this story ends. He stood slowly, looked Threxus in his crystalline eyes, and spoke 4 words that would echo through the galaxy for generations. We are done kneeling. The warehouse erupted, not with violence but with light. Every screen, every projector, every device activated simultaneously, broadcasting a single message to every corner of the solar system. Footage of Titan's destruction played alongside council communications dismissing human concerns. Records of 20 other colonies that had mysteriously failed, always with council ships nearby. Financial documents showing how alien corporations had systematically undermined Earth's economy. And finally, schematics. Weapons humanity wasn't supposed to have. Ships we'd been building in secret. Technologies we'd developed by studying every piece of council equipment we could steal, salvage, or buy. The council had thought us primitive, limited, manageable. They forgot that humans learn. We adapt, we survive. And when you push us hard enough, we push back with everything we have. Threxus stared at the screens, his form flickering with what might have been fear, and for the first time in the conversation he understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration of war. Donovan let him leave, let him carry the message back to the council chambers where they'd made their terrible mistake. Let them see what they'd created by treating kindness as weakness, by mistaking patience for submission. Earth wasn't asking for a seat at the table anymore. We were building our own table, and we were carving it from the bones of anyone who stood in our way. The Galactic Council's war chamber had never been designed for panic, but panic was exactly what filled it now. The room stretched vast and circular, built to accommodate 70 different species, each with their own atmospheric requirements and spatial needs. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing fleet positions, resource allocations, diplomatic channels. But today every screen showed the same thing. Human vessels appearing where they shouldn't exist, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach, then vanishing before any response could be mounted. Senator Kavalith of the Nexari Collective slammed 3 of his forearms against his podium, his blue skin flushing dark with frustration. The Nexari were one of the oldest species in the council, their civilization spanning 12,000 years. They'd seen empires rise and fall, witnessed countless wars, brokered peace between species that hated each other for millennia, but they'd never seen anything like this. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for barely 70 years, still considered children by cosmic standards, yet in 6 months they'd crippled council operations across 4 sectors. The latest attack had destroyed a council weapons depot on Xerxes Prime, a planet so deep in council territory that its location wasn't even on public star maps. Somehow humans had found it, bypassed the defense grid, and stolen enough antimatter warheads to level a dozen worlds. But they didn't just steal the weapons, they left a gift in return. Every council officer's personal communicator on that base received the same message. A photograph of Titan's destroyed domes, with a simple caption counting down. 39,999 to go. One for every soul lost. High Commander Vex of the Korlathi species stood at the center of the chamber, his massive form radiating heat that made the air shimmer around him. The Korlathi were warriors, bred for combat across 800 generations, their society built entirely around military excellence. Vex had personally led campaigns against the Harveen swarms, had broken the Talrock Rebellion, had never tasted defeat. Now he stared at the tactical displays showing human attack patterns and felt something he hadn't experienced in 40 years. Uncertainty. They fight without honor, Vex growled, his voice like grinding stone. They strike from shadows, target civilians, use deception instead of strength. This is not war, this is cowardice. A soft laugh echoed through the chamber and every head turned toward the human delegation's empty seat. Not empty, they realized. Someone was sitting there, had been sitting there the entire time, hidden by some kind of stealth field that only now deactivated. A woman materialized, young by council standards, maybe 30 human years, with dark skin and eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. She wore a simple gray uniform with no insignia, no rank markers, nothing to identify her beyond the small earth flag patch on her shoulder. "My name is Sergeant Nina Okafor," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I'm here to deliver a message from Captain Hayes and the Terran Resistance." Security forces moved immediately, weapons charging, exits sealing. But Nina didn't move, didn't even flinch. She simply placed a small device on the desk in front of her and pressed a button. Every weapon in the chamber went dead. Every door unlocked. Every environmental system switched to Earth-standard atmosphere and gravity. The council members gasped, choked, struggled as oxygen levels dropped and pressure changed. Within seconds, they were experiencing just a fraction of what humans endured every time they entered this chamber. Modifying their own biology to accommodate alien comfort. "You call us cowards," Nina continued, her voice steady as council members struggled to breathe. "You who destroyed 40,000 civilians without warning. You who hide behind laws you wrote to favor yourselves. You who've spent centuries taking what you want from species too weak to fight back." She paused, letting the environmental systems return to normal, letting them gasp and recover. "We're not here to play by your rules anymore. We're here to teach you what real fear feels like," Commander Vex roared, his body temperature spiking so high that nearby delegates had to shield themselves. "You dare threaten this council? You are one species against 70. Your fleets are nothing compared to our armadas. Your technology is primitive. Your worlds are few. We will crush you like the insects you are." Nina smiled, and it was the coldest expression most of the council had ever seen on any face. "You still don't understand. We're not trying to win your war. We're not trying to conquer your territory or claim your resources. We have one goal, Commander. Make you hurt the way we hurt. Make you afraid the way you made us afraid. Make you lose everything you love? Then tell you it was just a tragic accident. Just a miscommunication. Just the cost of being part of something bigger than yourselves." She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. Every human installation, every colony, every orbital platform was marked in red. "You see these? We've already evacuated them. Every civilian, every child, every person who wanted to live in peace is gone, scattered across hidden locations you'll never find. What's left are soldiers, volunteers, people who watched their families die and decided dying with purpose was better than living with fear." The display zoomed out, showing council space. Thousands of markers appeared, blue dots scattered throughout the galaxy. "And these are us. Human operatives embedded in your cities, your fleets, your governments. Some are military, some are civilians who learned to fight. All of them are waiting for orders." Senator Kavalith's voice shook as he spoke. "This is madness. You cannot sustain this. Eventually you'll run out of supplies, out of people, out of hope. What then? What do you gain by sacrificing yourselves?" Nina turned to face him directly. "You're right. Eventually we'll lose. Eventually you'll hunt down every last human and wipe us from existence. But here's what you're not calculating, Senator. Before that happens, we'll make you pay such a terrible price that every species in this galaxy will remember us. They'll remember that humanity didn't beg, didn't surrender, didn't accept your mercy. They'll remember we fought back, and they'll wonder if they could do the same." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates called for her immediate execution. Others demanded negotiation. A few, the quieter ones, the species who'd also suffered under council dominance, said nothing at all but watched with new eyes. Nina let them argue, let them rage, then raised her hand for silence. Somehow, impossibly, they gave it to her. Captain Hayes wants you to understand something, she said. Titan wasn't just a colony to us. It was proof that humans could thrive anywhere, that we deserved our place among the stars. When you destroyed it, you didn't just kill our people. You killed our belief that we could coexist peacefully. You killed our trust. You killed any reason we had to hold back. She picked up her device, preparing to leave. So here's what happens next. Every Council military installation will be targeted. Every trade route will be disrupted. Every species that supports you will question whether that support is worth the cost. And every time you strike at Earth, we'll make sure the retaliation is so severe that you'll wish you'd never heard our name. High Commander Vex moved with surprising speed for his size, blocking her path to the door. You won't leave this chamber alive, human. Your tricks won't save you now. Nina looked up at him. This massive warrior who'd broken armies and conquered worlds, and laughed. Actually laughed, the sound echoing through the stunned silence. Commander, I was dead the moment I volunteered for this mission. We all are. That's what makes us dangerous. You fight to protect your civilizations, your families, your futures. We fight because we have nothing left to protect. We're already ghosts. We're already gone. We're just deciding how many of you to take with us before we disappear. The device in her hand beeped twice. Every display in the chamber switched to show the same image. Donovan Hayes standing on the bridge of a ship, surrounded by officers whose faces held the same deadly calm as Nina's. Greetings, Galactic Council. Donovan's voice filled the chamber. While you've been threatening my messenger, 17 of your listening posts have gone offline. Not destroyed, taken over. We now control your long-range communications array. Every message you send, we hear. Every order you give, we know. You wanted to treat us like children? Then let me teach you something every human child learns. Monsters are real. They don't hide under beds or in closets. They hide in positions of power, behind laws and bureaucracy, wearing the face of civilization while committing atrocities. You became our monsters. Now we're returning the favor. The transmission ended. Nina walked past Vex, past the security forces, past every delegate who could have stopped her but somehow didn't. She reached the chamber doors and paused, looking back one final time. Tell your people to remember Titan because we'll never let you forget. Then she was gone, disappeared into the station's corridors like smoke. Alarms blared as security searched for her, but they wouldn't find her. She was already on a transport, already jumping to the next target, already preparing for the next strike. Behind her, the Galactic Council faced a truth they'd spent centuries avoiding. They'd created an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be defeated through conventional warfare, couldn't be stopped because it no longer feared death. They'd turned humanity's greatest strength, our capacity for hope, into our most terrible weapon. The absolute certainty that some things matter more than survival. 6 months after Nina Okafor walked out of the council chambers, the galaxy had learned to flinch at the mention of Earth. Trade routes that once hummed with constant traffic now sat empty. Merchants too afraid to risk human sabotage. Council military bases tripled their security. Yet attacks continued with clockwork precision. And in the dark spaces between stars where official reports never reached, whispers spread among dozens of species. Whispers about resistance, about freedom, about the courage to say no. Donovan Hayes stood in the observation deck of the Perseverance, watching Jupiter's great red storm churn in the distance. His ship, cobbled together from salvaged council technology and human ingenuity, had become the flagship of Earth's scattered fleet. Around him, the bridge crew worked in focused silence, each person carrying the weight of names they'd never forget. Behind every tactical decision, every calculated strike, lay a simple truth. They weren't fighting for victory. They were fighting so the galaxy would remember humanity fought it all. Captain, incoming transmission, Lieutenant Park announced, her voice tight with tension. It's from the Council. They're requesting a meeting. No conditions, no threats. They say they want to talk about ending this. The bridge went silent. Every eye turned to Donovan, waiting for his response. He'd heard offers before, promises of justice and reform, words carefully crafted to sound like compromise while changing nothing. But something in Park's voice made him pause. She'd learned to read council communications better than anyone, could spot deception in the microsecond delays of their translators, the specific word choices that revealed true intent. If she thought this was different, maybe it was. Where and when? Donovan asked. Neutral space. The Helios station, Edge of the Kepler Belt. They're offering full diplomatic immunity, guaranteed safe passage. Ambassador Threxus will represent the council. Park looked up from her screen. Captain, they've also agreed to let us broadcast the entire meeting across all public channels. No closed doors, no secret negotiations. Everything on record. That changed things. The council's power had always relied on controlling information, shaping narratives, keeping their dealings hidden from the species they governed. Agreeing to a public negotiation meant they were desperate, or it meant they were setting a trap so obvious they knew humanity would see through it. Either way, Donovan couldn't ignore the opportunity. 3 days later, he stood across from Ambassador Threxus in a conference room designed for precisely this kind of moment. The glass walls looked out onto open space, stars stretching infinitely in all directions, a reminder of how small their conflicts were against the universe's vast indifference. Cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting to billions across council space and Earth alike. Between them sat a simple table, empty except for 2 chairs and the weight of everything that had happened. Threxus looked different than Donovan remembered. The ambassador's crystalline form seemed duller somehow, the light within him less vibrant. When he spoke, his translated voice carried none of its previous superiority. Captain Hayes, I want to begin by saying something that should have been said months ago. I'm sorry. The Galactic Council is sorry. For Titan, for every colony we failed to protect, for every time we treated your species as less than equal. Our apologies cannot return the dead, but they are sincere. Donovan said nothing, just watched the alien diplomat with eyes that had seen too much to trust easy words. Threxus continued, his form flickering with what might have been shame. You've taught us something we thought we'd learned millennia ago but had forgotten. Power without accountability breeds cruelty. Safety without justice breeds oppression. We built a system that benefited the strong and ignored the weak, and we justified it by calling it order, calling it civilization, calling it necessary. But you showed the galaxy what it really was. Tyranny wearing a pleasant mask. Pretty speech, Donovan replied, his voice flat. But speeches don't bring back my daughter. Speeches don't undo Titan or the 20 colonies before it. Speeches don't account for 70 years of exploitation disguised as partnership. You're right, Threxus said simply. So let me speak not in words but in actions. He activated a holographic display showing council space. Effective immediately, the Galactic Council is dissolving its current structure. All species, including humanity, will have equal representation in the new assembly. No more permanent seats, no more hierarchies based on age or technology. Every voice counts the same. The display shifted, showing legal documents scrolling past. All trade agreements with Earth are being renegotiated under neutral arbitration. Every resource contract, every technology exchange, every financial arrangement will be reviewed and made fair. The species that authorized Titan's destruction have been removed from power and will face trial under laws that apply equally to everyone. Donovan felt something shift inside him, but he couldn't name it. Hope felt too dangerous, too much like the belief he'd buried with his family. And what guarantee do we have that this isn't temporary? That once we stand down, once we stop being a threat, everything returns to how it was? Threxus's form pulsed with light. A gesture Donovan had learned meant absolute sincerity in his species. You've already won, Captain. Not militarily, we both know the Council could still crush Earth through sheer numbers and resources. But you've won something more important. You've changed how every species in this galaxy thinks about power. There are protests on 40 worlds demanding reform. 7 species have withdrawn from Council agreements. Dozens more are questioning whether they want to be part of a system that could do to them what was done to you. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was almost a whisper. You've made us afraid. Not of your weapons, but of what we became, of what we allowed ourselves to justify. The conference room silence stretched long enough that Donovan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the eyes of billions watching this moment. He thought about his daughter, about the message she'd sent him the day before Titan died, about her little voice saying she missed him. He thought about every soldier who'd volunteered knowing they'd probably die, every family that had scattered to the stars choosing survival over surrender. He thought about Nina Okafor, who'd walked into the council chambers alone because someone had to show them humanity couldn't be broken. I want Titan rebuilt, Donovan said finally. Every colony that was destroyed restored, and I want memorials on every council world. Places where people can remember what happens when the powerful forget to care about the powerless. Done. Threxus agreed immediately. We'll fund the reconstruction entirely. No debt, no strings attached. The memorials will be our shame and our reminder. I want access to council technology, real access, not scraps and leftovers. If we're equals, we share knowledge equally. The archives will open to human researchers immediately. What took other species centuries to learn, we'll teach you in decades. Donovan leaned forward, his eyes locked on the ambassador. And I want one more thing. Every species that's been marginalized, every civilization you've treated the way you treated us gets the same reforms. This isn't just about humanity. It's about making sure what happened to us never happens to anyone again. Threxus was quiet for a long moment, and Donovan wondered if he'd pushed too far. Then the ambassador stood, his crystalline form blazing with light bright enough to make the cameras adjust. Captain Hayes, you've reminded us what we should have always been. Protectors, not rulers. Partners, not masters. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I accept all your terms. More than that, I accept the responsibility to be better than we were. The broadcast went out across the galaxy, and in homes on 1,000 worlds, people watched two former enemies shake hands, not because the war was won, but because both sides finally understood what they'd been fighting for. Justice, not vengeance. Change, not destruction. A future where power came with accountability and strength meant protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. On Earth, in the hidden bases and scattered settlements, humans watched their captain negotiate peace and felt something they'd almost forgotten. Not hope exactly, but something close. The certainty that their sacrifices had meant something, that the people they'd lost hadn't died for nothing. The memorial services would continue. The grief would never fully heal, but now there was purpose behind the pain. They'd change the galaxy not through conquest, but through courage. Not through superior technology, but through refusing to accept injustice as inevitable. Donovan returned to the Perseverance and stood once more in the observation deck, watching Jupiter's storm churn. Lieutenant Park joined him, and together they looked out at the stars that had taken so much but taught them more. Do you think it'll last? She asked quietly. Do you think they'll keep their promises? I don't know, Donovan admitted, but I know they'll never forget what happens when they don't. We've written our story into the galaxy's memory. Humanity stood up when it would have been easier to kneel. We fought back when surrender made more sense, and we did it not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we decided some things matter more than survival. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Nina Okafor received the news aboard her ship. She'd been preparing for another strike, another message carved in fire and determination. Now she stood down, watching the broadcast of Donovan and Threxus shaking hands, and let herself feel something she'd thought was gone forever. Relief not that the fighting was over, but that maybe it had meant something after all. She thought about the people she'd lost, the life she'd abandoned, the person she'd become. It had cost everything, but looking at the new treaties being signed, the reforms being implemented, the species celebrating freedom they'd never dared dream possible, she understood why some prices are worth paying. The galaxy would remember Titan. It would remember the 40,000 souls who died for no reason except they were in the wrong place when the powerful stopped caring. But it would also remember what came after, how grief became strength, how pain became purpose, how humanity took its darkest moment and used it to light a fire that illuminated every shadow where injustice hid. They'd learned the hard way that peace without justice is just waiting for the next war. That safety without accountability is just another word for oppression, that sometimes the only way to change the world is to refuse to accept it as it is. Years later, at the memorial on the rebuilt Titan, children of 100 species would run between monuments engraved with names, playing games in domes their parents had fought to protect, and above them, carved in letters visible from orbit, would be humanity's gift to the galaxy. A simple reminder of everything they'd learned, everything they'd paid, everything they'd become. Remember not just those who fell, but why they mattered. Remember not just the war, but what we won. A galaxy where every species, no matter how young or small or different, has the right to exist without fear. That's what Titan means. That's what humanity means. That's what we'll protect together forever. Donovan Hayes would live to see that memorial completed, would stand among the crowds at its dedication, would finally let himself cry for everything he'd lost and everything he'd saved, and when young people asked him how he'd done it, how he'd faced impossible odds and changed the galaxy. He'd tell them the truth. I didn't do it alone. None of us did. We did it together. Every human who refused to give up. Every alien who stood with us. Every person who decided that justice matters more than safety. That's the real story. Not one captain or one battle, but millions of people choosing to care when it would have been easier not to. That's what changes worlds. That's what moves stars. The war was over. The healing had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity's ships turned toward home, carrying stories that would echo through generations, proving that even the smallest species could shake the foundations of empire if they refused to accept that things had to stay broken. They'd paid in blood and tears and sacrifice and loss, but they'd bought something precious. A future where Titan's children could look up at the stars and see not threats but possibilities. Where every species could dream of tomorrow without fearing today. Where the galaxy finally understood that civilization isn't measured by how advanced your technology is, but by how you treat those who cannot fight back. That was humanity's gift. That was Titan's legacy. That was the price of stars, and it was worth every tear.